Ancient Egypt, land of the pharaohs, a beacon of progress on the horizon of humanity, but a cruel and barbarous civilization just the same.
That's the dumbest thing I ever heard.
You're what the French call les incompétents.
In France, everyone wears stripes, a beret, a red scarf, and a baguette.
Bonjour YouTube, comment allez-vous? Obviously I am French, obviously I'm an old geezer. I'm approaching 70, I've been in America almost 50 years now. Sorry about the stereotype, yeah, no beret, no baguette, not even a mustache. It goes to show that stereotypes can be pretty misleading. In fact, this is one reason why I wrote this book. You can tell the American dream never really picked up on me. I mean, it's great to make money, but where I come from, we value education and reading books more than anything. Obviously, the kinds of books I like to read, it's about a specific subject. See for yourself. This is just the tip of the iceberg. In the 50 years I've been in America, I read quite a few books on that subject. I read so many books, in fact, that I could write my own book. This one right here. And hopefully it will help dispel some myths and misinformation and misconceptions on the subject. When I see some TV shows and movies, I have to say I'm surprised how much misinformation, distortions there you can find. It would be nice to take a trip in a time machine and visit ancient Egypt. You could see the real thing. Now, I could not build a time machine, of course, but this is probably the next best thing. I got a lot of very precious, very unexpected help along the way, so I believe I've achieved something which, if you read this book, you're really going to feel what it's like to be in ancient Egypt and see the real things the way it really was. Not all the misconstrued stuff that you see on TV or in movies. And how did I get there? That's an interesting story. Let me give you a hint. And truly, anyone interested in the subject of ancient Egypt should feel privileged, as I do, to have this remarkable museum here in San Jose, California, not far from the place where my parents and I moved in when we came to America. What's interesting, there's only two full-size reproductions of an Egyptian tomb in America. One in Chicago, I believe it's at the Oriental Institute, and one here in San Jose, California, inside this museum. And it's not just a museum, there's more. Let me show you. And sure enough, it's not just a museum here in San Jose, it's an entire park. This place is called Rosicrucian Park. It was built a long time ago by some people who are very much into ancient Egypt. It's not a religious group, it's more like a mystical fraternity. I mean, I don't know everything about them. They're very much into ancient Egypt, so they built this beautiful museum and this beautiful park. Coming out here is a real privilege, especially if you're on that subject. And walking around here really makes you feel like you have traveled back in time to ancient Egypt. When I wrote my book, I spent a lot of time here. I could really find inspiration and peace. Amazing as it is, this place here is merely a legacy, a part of the legacy of ancient Egypt. Most scholars, everyone will tell you this amazing culture died out. So basically, it doesn't exist anymore, any more than Rome, Greece, Egypt, Mesopotamia. I mean, due to the influence of other religions and other culture, that some cultures simply don't exist anymore. Officially, the worship of the goddess Isis, for example, ended around 400 AD with the closing of the last temples. Why don't you take a quick look at this documentary here?
In Egypt, well over 2,000 years ago, a cult emerged, traces of which are still visible today, even in Germany. The mysteries of Isis and Osiris. The Nile is at the center of a saga that dates back to Egypt's very beginnings. The Isis cult established itself on all levels of society. Its success stemmed from the fact that women felt particularly at ease in an Isis temple, because in Isis communities, men and women were regarded as equals, quite astonishing in the male-dominated world of Rome. Exotic origins, complex, mystically charged rituals. There is no doubt that Isis, the mother of all, had just what it takes to be an imperial super goddess. In the end, however, the Isis cult could not withstand the challenge from Christianity. In AD 354, all pagan cults were banned in the Roman Empire. From then on, Christianity was to be the sole religion for its citizens.
And so this wonderful goddess who was worshipped back in ancient Egypt, her cult, I don't like to call it a cult actually, it's more like a religion, like any other religion. The same way that Christianity originated back in Palestine and spread all the way to South America, it was the same thing with the worship of the goddess Isis. Officially, it was suppressed and eradicated around the 4th century. What's not so well known is that it was suppressed all right, but it was never eradicated. Small branches of this religion, which originated such a long time ago in ancient Egypt, are still alive today, they still exist. They're few, far between, and they don't like publicity, but they're still around. And I feel extremely privileged to have met one small group of people who are part of this extraordinary culture. How I met them is not important. What is important is that from them, they accepted me among them, they accepted me as a guest, and they even let me take part in the rituals, because they could see I was sincerely interested on the subject of ancient Egypt, and from them, the information I gathered was truly amazing. It is from them that I gathered a gold mine of information that really helped me with dissipating all the myths and nonsense on that subject. And this is a book that means a lot to me. It's an old textbook. It was given to me when I was in this elementary school back in Africa in the mid-1960s. So I was only 10 years old when I first read that book. Now I'm almost 70, so you can tell it's a little beat up. I've owned it for a very long time. This little book means a lot to me because it was the very first time that I found out for sure that my mother was right. You can learn an awful lot about people and human nature, how ungrateful, how petty people can be, by reading one of the folk tales in the story, a really old folk tale, The Hunter, the Crocodile, and the Hare. In a nutshell, it's a story of a crocodile who gets rescued from death, from the drought, by a man, a hunter, an African hunter, of course. And later, instead of showing any gratitude, the crocodile wants to eat the hunter. Fortunately for him, he gets helped by other animals. So, of course, you feel sympathy for the man, of course, being almost killed by the crocodile. But later in the story, instead of showing any gratitude to the animals who saved his life, the hunter, the man, turns on the other animals and wants to eat them or kill them also. Fortunately, the other animals manage to flee, and as they flee, they tell the moral of the story, that yes, you know better than the crocodile. So my mother was right. Humans are petty. Human nature should be taken with a big grain of salt. Humans are ungrateful. Humans can be very petty, very ungrateful. Human nature is not something that should be idolized. So I've had a lot of time to read a lot of other books since I read this one, but this was really my first step in a journey where I really learned that classical literature can make you really understand something about human character. And that is why, where I come from, when we're looking at anyone, we're not so easily impressed by someone's jargon or celebrity status. We look more at the person's character. And anyone with this kind of attitude, always tooting his horn, I'm not going to use it because it's too loud, tooting his horn, bragging that he or she is basically infallible, that his viewpoint is not subject to any form of criticism, that any facts, no matter how small, that contradict what he or she believes in is nonsense and should be dismissed outright, and that anyone, no matter how educated, who disagrees with him or her is just someone who's just good enough to go back to the kitchen and wash dishes. Well, that's not the kind of person you want to respect or entrust with any power to rule over your lives, believe me. Somebody like this is nothing more than a weak mind and a fool. It's not rocket science. Anyone who's well-versed in any form of literature can tell you that. I mean, even these little African folk tales I used to read so many years ago in Africa taught me so much about human nature. It's a weakness of human nature. Anyone who brags basically that he or she is infallible, and that you're a fool if you don't listen to him, he's a fool. He's the one who lives in a fantasy world.
Got a minute? I'm kind of busy. I'm inventing a system of heraldry for 2 warring tribes of orcs in my D&D campaign.
I was hoping we could talk about atheism.
Much like an orc, I'm all ears.
What's it like to not believe in God?
It's great, big fan.
Are you ever afraid you're wrong?
About religion? Never. About other things? Also never.
A weak mind has this need to live in a fantasy world where basically he's immune to criticism, and whatever he says is just not subject to any criticism or discussion, because a weak mind cannot take any contradiction or any criticism. It's very simple. It's not rocket science. The problem is that people like this are not only just foolish, they're also dangerous, and I'm not the only one to think so.
When you wrote this, what were you trying to accomplish with the book, and did you do it? Were you nailing liberals for 30 years of social policy? What were you trying to say?
I was trying to reveal the thinking behind that, the kinds of assumptions, the kind of world that exists inside their mind, and therefore why those assumptions are so dangerous in the long run. It's not just the policies mentioned in that
They
book.
think they're better than everybody else.
Oh, absolutely. There's no question. And that's what makes them dangerous. Even all the policies that are mentioned there, 20 years from now, those policies may not be the policies we're concerned about. But that mindset will still be there. And what makes them tremendously dangerous is that facts that contradict what they believe are simply ignored or evaded.
By contrast, here in America, most people like to spend their time watching sports on TV while eating good hot dogs. I like hot dogs. Nothing wrong with this, really. Except this is not what's going to make you a good judge of character. And that is why in America there's so many people of dubious character taking advantage of this and leading this country on a fairly dangerous path. Mainly celebrity activists and intellectuals of all kinds. They are so deluded with grandeur now. Because in America there's this misconception that if someone is a celebrity or an intellectual talking fancy jargon, that this person is like this shining beacon of knowledge and wisdom that's going to make the world a better place. And trust me on this, anyone who knows anything about people can tell you this is actually a very bad, very dangerous misconception. Because if you let somebody like this, if you let this kind of weak-minded fool gain too much power, well, this is going to lead to prohibition. I've been in America nearly 50 years now, and honestly, I would really hate to see prohibition raise its ugly head again. I'm beginning to see this happening, and this is one reason I tackle the subject in my book. Because from my point of view as an outsider who's been in America so long, I find this a little alarming, actually. If you want any details, you can just read the book, but I thought I had to put my 2 cents in this matter, because honestly, it is alarming. Prohibition has a pretty bad legacy, and I've been in America almost 50 years now. I love this country. I love hot dogs. I think it would not be a good thing to see prohibition in America again. Praise to the gods.
Treat the people who have a problem with alcohol. Don't try and treat the whole country.
Over the years, there have been many calls upon Congress by one group of Americans or another for constitutional amendments that would impose their version of morality on the rest of their fellow citizens. All have been defeated, at least in part because the memory of prohibition and the unintended consequences that accompanied it remain fresh more than 3/4 of a century after it ended.
I haven't had a drink in 35 years, and I don't even care if I ever have another drink. I don't long for it or ache for it. But if somebody said, you can't have another drink, I'd probably go to some demo in front of the federal courthouse and have one. It's one of those things that where the average American says, who the hell are you to tell me how to live? And if we cease being that country, if we become a country in which we all say, please tell me how to live, we're doomed.